I'd like to call this meeting for May 11th to order. A roll call, please.
Dick Pufall,
Here.
Mike Berlin,
Here.
Gary Mertig,
Here.
Bill Metzinger,
Here.
Martin Vitak.
Here. Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. We need a motion.
Here, Murdick, I'll make that motion.
Motion by Gary Murray. Do I have a second? Seconded by Marty Vitak. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Public comments.
Dick, this is Lori Schmidt. I have something I'd like to read to the committee, so if you can give me 10 seconds to get up to the boardroom, I would appreciate it.
I don't even know what she said.
He's coming up, Lori's coming up to talk to us. Lori's downstairs, she's gonna come up here.
We have,
I'll put it on this monitor and swing it around for him. Lori's right on the ball. She's like, well, I've got something to read. Give me 10 seconds to get up to the boardroom. She must be not in this one. This must be a Heather one.
There there are people on the line that are live.
Oops.
there's a mic right there. That's pretty quick.
This is in regard to the remote work policy. National studies show that working remotely is less productive. With the county having financial trouble, is this really in the best interest of the county or its taxpayers? The county used COVID money to purchase many laptops for employees to work remotely. When these computers need to be replaced or upgraded, it will be at the expense of the county. There will be no more free money. Remote workers have no fuel expense. They don't need to own a vehicle or pay for insurance. They have the ability to write off the home office space on their taxes. These are just a few of the savings to remote employees that can add up to be worth thousands of dollars in benefit for only a select few. If an employee can work 1 or 2 days in the office or just work remotely in the summer months, why can they not be in the office full time? It sounds like what it is. What is more beneficial for me, the employee? In your paperwork, the statement has been made that some departments have worked remote for many years, well before COVID. This was done without approval of the executive committee or the full board. This shows there was no transparency, but simply a hidden benefit by some department. Essential employees have an extra workload due to co-workers not being in the office and perhaps not being able to do 100% of the job. Someone has to pick up the slack and do the extra duties. Being the administrative assistant to the county administrator for 26 plus years, part of my job duties include loss control and workers' comp. I can tell you that by having employees working remotely, the county is greatly increasing their exposure to worker comp claims. Statements have been made that remote work helps retain and attract new employees. The turnover of employees in Ashland County is one of the lowest in the state. Turnovers are mainly due to retirement. The county administrator, in both his letters to this committee, has stated in writing that if employees feel they are being treated unfairly because they cannot work remotely, then they should consider getting training or experience to allow them to apply for a job they can do remotely, quote unquote. This statement is a direct slap in the face to all employees that cannot work remotely and simply encourages employees to look for employment elsewhere, thus creating turnover. Many of the county's employees are long-term and have many years of experience and knowledge and are now being encouraged to look elsewhere for employment. bottom line is this. Ashland County is not a privately owned business. We are here to serve the public, and it is unfair to county taxpayers that pay for county worker wages. Taxpayers and other public deserve to be able to walk into any county building or office during normal work hours and get the help answers that they need. Employees need to be available face to face. Remote work is not cost beneficial to Ashland County or its taxpayers. It is only beneficial for the employee. I know my statements today will make some county employees extremely mad and others very happy. Either way, this is okay because I work just like every other employee and every county board supervisor for the taxpayer, not the employees. I stand before you today not as a disgruntled employee, but simply a resident and taxpayer of the county asking you to do what is right for every citizen of the county and for all of the remote work policy. It served its purpose, but it is now time to get back to serving the citizens of the county as they deserve, in person, in county building. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Anyone else? Public comment period. Is there anyone on the phone? Lori, can't answer that right now.
No.
All right, we'll move along. Approval of the executive minutes from April 29th. We need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
We'll wait till Lori gets down there so she can record this. Lori, are you down there?
I am.
Okay, Mike Berlin made a motion to approve the executive meeting minutes. Do we have a second? Bill Metziger, second of the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 5 on the agenda, remote work policy. Mark?
Okay. Before you go on, I would check if there's anybody on the line that for public comment.
I already did that.
Yeah, but Lori wasn't down there.
Oh, Lori,
Yes.
do we have anybody on the line for public comments?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Clark?
Yes, okay. So this item has come back to you a second time. One of the concerns from the last discussion was Bill had asked how many people are involved with this. At the bottom of your packet, there's a couple different things here. There's a letter from, this would be page 21, Remote Work, Health and Human Services. They basically have a listing of full-time remote workers, part-time remote workers, full-time workers working. What? Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry, okay, all right, sorry. They couldn't hear me in here. Basically, on page 21, we have the information that the committee wanted from Health and Human Services, 28 workers working at least part-time remotely, 14 workers working full-time remotely. In addition, we have a letter from the public health officer, and then there's a remote work in the ESS department, so Economic Support Department, which is a remote thing anyway for the 12 county consortium that we're a part of. And then in addition, I didn't have in the packet, we basically, if we go with this remote policy, we are negotiating with another company that would rent out some 2 offices in the Health and Human Services building, which would bring in, Terry, what were you guys talking about? $600 a month?
$600 a month for each office, so it comes up to be $14,400 per year.
Yeah, and that would come into the county for if we, if we do approve this remote work policy. But I think in the long run, as you go forth over the next 5 or 10 years, you'll be able to look at, do you really need the 514 building downtown if you end up with a remote work policy? And I think as you look at, in the very long term, if you look at a government center, what would your government center look like if you rebuilt a more modern building on your 20 acres? And so I think this is a foundation for a number of different decisions that will happen. I will say I came from a county with a remote work policy. We started that in 2010, and I am supportive of this. I think this is a good move for the county. I think if you're going to have a county that's going to not provide regular step increases or raises, and you're going to increase their healthcare costs, I think you're going to have more problems with retention and recruiting. This would be one avenue for some jobs. But as Lori had explained, not every job can be done remote. If you work in the jail, your job is not a remote job, and there's nothing you can do about that unless you move to be another position. I have seen this be successful, mostly in Health and Human Services, but I've seen this be successful, and I would support the committee approving this policy. As was stated in the policy, we basically have a current policy that we enacted on June 2nd last year. And if the committee is going to, not approve this policy, then they would have to make a motion to rescind the current policy and direct staff to not be able to work remote anymore. And there are a number of staff from Health and Human Services that would be able to take questions if you have questions concerning implementation of this. So with that, I'd seek a motion to approve the remote work policy.
Dick, I'm not going to make that motion. I'm going to be very public about this. And it may sound strange because I worked from home for 14 years, but I'm against the work at home policy at the moment because the constituents want to see somebody in person. And so I'm just letting everybody know I'm not against it or for continuing it. I'd like to see it rescinded, but I'll let everybody else speak their mind first.
Mike?
Now that we have the numbers, I sort of pointed over at Bill only because he was the request of these numbers. And did they answer the question that you had?
Yes, they did. I kind of wanted to get an idea what we were even talking about. And I, just from talking to different people, I probably talked to about 25 people what their feelings were. And the majority of them were against people working from home. I think some of the people, or most of the people that are working from home, they're very good, they're very responsible. I don't believe that they are taking advantage of the system. But the thing is, I don't believe that department heads should be working from home. I think they should be here. I think what happens if we hire a new, or when we do hire a new county administrator, and the administrator says, I'm going to work from home. You know, I think it benefits somebody. A lot of people, they've got benefits. COVID hopefully is past. I know of another case where someone has 2 little children and they're working from home. I've watched my grandkids and they drive me to drink. I can't work from home. You know, and I think yeah, we're losing people regardless. I think people should get paid more. I think Ashland County is paying their employees low. But I don't think anybody was hired to work from home. You know, and that's a little bit different. If they were specifically hired, and when they were hired, they said you can work from home, that's a little bit different story. You know, and then we're pulling the rug out from underneath them. We told them something and now we're changing our mind. I asked the highway department, nobody from the highway department is working from home. There's a couple people working from the courthouse from home. So I agree with Gary. I think they should go back to working their normal hours and not having remote. Now, the elected officials are different. The elected officials can do what they want because they're elected. Like say, for instance, the register of deeds, the county clerk, the treasurer, they're elected. The other people are not elected, and I think they should be here for the public.
Anybody else want to comment?
Laura has her hand up.
Has there been any complaints about anybody, like from people who are receiving direct services, that they are not getting the service that they want because they haven't been able to see someone?
This is Terry Barningham. No, there has not. In fact, we have good metrics in place to show that we are at times more productive for people. We have less overtime because there's less distractions. For economic support, they have data that shows they are as productive or more productive when they are working remotely. They're mostly call centers, so it really doesn't matter, you know, whether they're in the building or not. They're taking calls, they're processing documents. Melanie could talk about that a little bit more. Pete has some people who are working remotely where, again, they're doing better because they have less distractions. They can get their billing done. Billing is very important for us for cash flow purposes. So the less distractions you have from people stopping in your office door and chit-chatting with you or asking you a personal or a work question and then getting off topic a little bit, you know, they've done studies where that can cost you 10 minutes every time there's a distraction. So for some people who don't have, who get distracted easier, it's really a benefit. And again, I think it goes back to we are trying to be creative and look at ways to increase revenue. We would be missing out if we have to have everybody back in the agency. Again, we have 2 to 3 people in an office. We have right now the ability to rent out office space and create revenue. There's also other departments that are paying rent that we could have come into the Sanborn building and save that rent. So, you know, you're looking at 14,000 plus in revenue that we could use for a prevention program, which everybody in Health and Human Services has been promoting prevention, prevention, prevention. 0 to 5 is as primary of prevention as you can get, which then down the line will save you more money because we won't have to have as many services in place because of the early intervention. And, you know, the department that is paying rent right now is paying over $10,000 a year in rent, knowing that in 2022, it's going to go up drastically, be much more expensive. So I think you need to look at this with more of an open view of it's not just fair or not fair. We are providing the services. We are looking to be creative and bringing in revenue and cutting costs. So I don't see a downside other than some people will have hurt feelings because it's not fair because they can't.
And I will say, just from a recruiting standpoint, you know, regardless of your opinions, more and more of the world is working remotely. And, you know, our counties around us have remote work policies. And if we want to compete with master level social workers, or we want to compete for economic support workers, and if somebody basically has to report to the office or they can work remotely, well, you know where they're going to go work. So I'm just saying, it's like the future is having a remote work policy. I think it's a mistake not to have a remote work policy. If you want to tighten it up, that's your job, is to tighten it up as a policy to recommend to the county board to say, maybe we want this or not that, but to say everybody's has to be in their butt of their chair. I mean, do you really think that I work 100% of my time in my office? Does anybody think that? I mean, I'm working at night, I'm working on the weekends. I mean, I work remotely, but I still come to the office, but it provides the flexibility. You call it a flex policy, and I don't know if you basically want me to say, Clark Schroeder, you need to be 40 hours in your office and just sit here and not work outside. You're going to get a lot less productive county administrator. And I think your next county administrator is going to have the flexibility to work remotely on the evenings and in the weekends remotely. But your decision.
I have a comment on that, Clark. The work at home policy, I think we have to alter the job descriptions then before we hire somebody that's going to be working at home. Just an example, my son is one of the 3 programmers for Essentia Health, the whole upper Midwest. And he started working remotely when the COVID hit. He's been working for a year now, remotely, but now it's a permanent position. He doesn't even have an office anymore. And the funniest part of that is that he's moving to Colorado. But he's going to be operating with Essentia Health in Duluth remotely from Colorado. So the workplace has changed so dramatically that I think we have to go with the flow. I'm not for or against remote, but if you are working remote, there's got to be some guidelines. An example, before remote came, people that had children had to do daycare to come to work. Anyway, I think that holds true. If you're working at home, you can't have kids running around and interrupting and screwing up telephone calls and all this kind of stuff.
And that's in the policy, Dick. If you read the policy, it says daycare is not compatible with reportable work hours. So you can't provide daycare and have being paid by the county at the same time.
I didn't say that we would provide daycare.
No. You can't basically provide daycare to your children and report workable hours to the county at the same time. It's incompatible. It's in the policy. So you can't take care of your kids at the same time you're working for the county.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's in the policy. She has a comment in back, Dick, if you want to hear it.
I could try to do what.
You have to speak up to a microphone, by the way.
Yeah, there's a mic there.
That'd be fine.
So I can just give you some information when it comes to the economic support unit, when it comes to remote work. Currently, I have 6 staff working remotely 100% successfully. In economic support, we have actually instilled the remote work prior to, that was started back in 2018, 2019 with the Northern Consortium. So as Clark had mentioned, we work in a call center. So we are part of a greater organization. We actually work with 11 other counties. So when we hop on a call, that call is for anywhere from Wood County, Taylor County, Lincoln County, anywhere in those 12 county regions. And we take those phone calls, we do applications and for food share and Medicaid, childcare, and other different kinds of Medicaid sources. So for us to work remotely, you have to have access to VPN. You have to have access to a workable phone, and you have to have good internet connection. Good internet connection was work with our IT. If you don't have it fast enough, you're not allowed to work remotely. So what happens is with your phone, if you put the first slide up on there, the call center staff. So on there's a call center snap screen that I had actually taken a snapshot of. And what that snapshot is basically what it shows is each worker's name, first name, last name, and exactly what they're doing. So if you look on there, you can see Are they on a call? Are they on a break? Is someone supervising? Are they processing documents? So for our call center, our hours haven't changed. We're 8 to 4. We have scheduled breaks. You have a scheduled lunch, and you have a scheduled afternoon break. So what happens is, if you are running late on a call and your break is at 10:15, we actually require our workers to email us as a consortium, letting us know you're late for break. So it allows other workers then to know, hey, I have to watch after that call center. So these metrics are already in place. We're able to know how much time a worker has on a call. We know when they log in, when they log out. We can go back and look at data and actually know how many keystrokes they had into each case. So there's a lot of metrics in place, and those metrics are mainly because we're part of a greater organization, the consortium, because when we first started, you had caseloads of workers who had 200 and 300 caseloads of a worker. Now we're expected to between 650 to 750 per worker. So we have to make sure that everybody's contributing. And how do we do that? We track how many calls they take. We track how many breaks they take. We track how many documents that they process. We track how many reviews and applications they do. So those metrics are out there. And so to broad stroke, the county saying that this cannot happen here is kind of like, well, you're forgetting that there are agencies within us, within the county, that have a lot of metrics in place. So.
And I might say, I remember when this consortium started, I was working for St. Clair County at the time, and part of the reason, it used to be if you were a person who needed economic support, you'd come into the office and you sit down with the staff, and that takes a lot of time. That's why these case counts were so low. They actually had to move to remote work in order to increase case counts, in order to increase productivity. That's what happened. And I don't think we don't have the option to, these people are going to work from wherever they're going to work. We're part of a consortium, but my daughter, she lives in Pittsburgh. She works for a company in London. And she goes whoever pays her the most. She competes on a dollar, and if somebody in London pays her more than somebody in New York, that's where she works for. So I see Pete has his hand up. Pete, go ahead.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Pete Hurleby. I'm the financial manager for Health and Human Services. And I had I discussed this a little bit with our committee when we last met. Laura's on that committee, and Bill's on that committee. I think, and I am, even though I like to say I'm flashy, I'm not. I am a pretty classic financial, logical geek, and consider myself pragmatic, practical. I think that what gets lost in, to me, all of the language and the different angles that are taken is that the bottom line is Ashland County employs people to get work done. And that sounds a little silly to say, but to me, the main measure is, for no matter where someone's working, is that job getting done well, or is it not? I think that some of the comments that I've heard so far imply that there's no diversity in the types of jobs around the county. I don't disagree with anyone who would say that when a citizen and a taxpayer needs services, they clearly need to be able to get those services. That's where the difference comes in. So not all jobs are make sense to be done remote. Highway department, of course not. Sheriff's department, of course not. Over in our building, we have someone who staffs the front desk and the lobby. Of course not. She can't work remotely. So I think there has to be, well, I shouldn't say has to. I think there are certainly distinctions to be made. So I don't think anyone's implying that people work remotely regardless of what their job duties are. Clearly, if your job is to interact with the public at a front desk or something, and help them with licensing or zoning or whatever, of course you have to be available. And I don't think anyone's disputing that. But the bottom line for me is, I've always been this way, is the work getting done? Things can get distracting if we don't focus on that. In my case, I've got 2 people. Most of my people are working in the office with me. It's basically a preference. The type of work we do is mostly behind the scenes. We interact with the public very, very infrequently. But we, like everyone in human services for the last year, we've been doing whatever we need to do from wherever we need to do it to get the job done. And I think that's the key. Is the job getting done or is it not? And so I do feel like, in broad strokes, just saying, well, you got to have your butt in the seat. I'm not sure I'm not sure that's logical. The people I work with, those of us in the office, it can be a benefit to work remotely, but it's not necessarily. I and the people I work with are in the office in part because it drove us a little batty to be working remotely. So we chose to come in. I've got a couple people who are still remote, and those 2 are doing their work as well and better actually than they were before. I don't know that that's a function of remote work or whatever, but they are. So I guess I think that it's not an all or nothing thing, in my opinion. I think that there have to be decisions based on, can the person fulfill the job remotely or can't they? And can they do a good job from home? Some people, I'm sure, aren't good at working remotely from home. Those people shouldn't be working from home. Let's see, I mentioned a couple things I'll finish up here quickly, but I mentioned a couple things when I was talking to our committee that I wanted to run by you also, in terms of that. Right, not all jobs can be done remotely. In my opinion, that doesn't mean it's not fair. That means that there are some jobs that literally require your physical presence all the time. Like I said, we come in and out based on what needs to get done. We need to get the job done. Sometimes it's job satisfaction, sometimes it's not. I guess those are the keys. I mean, when a person mentions, I know there are concerns, people watching kids, that's a very legitimate concern, obviously. I believe the policy is such that if you were working in the office and you would have to bring those kids to daycare, essentially, that's my view, then if you're working remotely, you would have to bring your kids to daycare, because I agree. You can't take care of, very young children or children that need your assistance a lot and still work. That's obvious. And I would also say, like I mentioned already, there are different requirements for different jobs. And I think that, of course, the citizens of Ashland County pay for and need to get the services they're asking for. That's not mutually exclusive from having people work remotely. So I think that's really a non-issue in my mind. And like I said, I don't necessarily have a horse in this race personally. I'm working in the office. I just feel like if you step back and take a logical look at the things, I think it makes a lot of sense to have that option for people. Thank you. Thanks for the time.
To reiterate, in your packet, you'll see the remote work request form. So the form basically is if an employee is interested in exploring if the job is compatible They fill out this request form, they talk about essential functions, they talk about what they can do, they talk about what is the benefit to the county. Obviously, it has to be a benefit to the county. You know, and then the equipment, and then the supervisors sign off on it, county administrator signs off on it, or that's the request form. Ergonomic self-evaluation, basically it has to be done to make sure that the workplace would be safe. Examples of that. And then basically, if that's approved by the county administrator and the supervisor and the department head and IT, then they basically would enter into a remote work agreement, which would stipulate what their schedule is going to be, when they're going to work, and understanding all the principles and the policies that are within this. So they basically can say, well, I never read it. So the policy that we're looking to adopt, they would have to sign off. Again, the department supervisor and the department head and the employee and the county administrator to do that. So,
Chair Pufall.
So, what kind of liability does the county have from those working from home?
the what? I didn't hear you.
What kind of liability?
So it's the same liability that you'd see at work here. So if somebody basically, that's why we have an ergonomic assessment. So let's say you're working at home and you're working with your keyboard way up high and you end up with carpal tunnel. Well, it's the same issue as if you had it at work. That's why there has to be pictures, has to be a drawing. You have to basically sign off on this ergonomic assessment. So it's no real different than you have at work.
Where does this go to? Who looks at this information?
So the supervisors would look at it first. They would forward it to their department head, and the department head would interact with IT to make sure that their internet service is compatible and meets the minimum standards of throughput. And then if all that lines up, then it would go to the county administrator, and then it would be filed away in their personnel file in the county clerk's office.
Chair Pufall, this is Supervisor Ortman. If I could get a minute when you see fit, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you all very much. I know this is a difficult subject, and I can only speak to my time on Health and Human Services. But I will tell everybody, Health and Human Services is 100 pounds of work with 5 pounds of workers always. And this remote policy is a tool they absolutely need because it's one of the things that they've used to be able to do more with less, which is what we're always asking of them, and which is their common operating status, more with less, more with less. So if you take this away from them, you're either gonna get less work done or you're gonna get requests to hire more staff. I guarantee that. So while absolutely this is not appropriate for everybody or for every office or for every job in the county, and certainly there are significant differences and struggles an at-work employee has to deal with versus an at-home or a remote working employee, we can't do without this, no matter how we want to wish we couldn't. The call center, I'll just mention that. That's a merging of resources at many different counties to try to blend all the efficiencies so they can get to more calls every day. And it works. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Terry, but that is something that they came up with to do more with less in no uncertain terms. So I'm convinced that that you have to have this policy. So if you cut yourself off in this policy, you're going to be cutting off your nose to spite your face, and you're just going to replace it with different problems and different expenses and more expenses, because they will not be able to take advantage of efficiencies that are allowed by letting people work remotely. So it's my strong recommendation that you approve this. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Bill? Go ahead, thank you.
So as I look at this remote COVID remote policy, this is a living document. This allows the people to continue to work at home. Parameters are written within for that to happen. And I look at this document as a living document Because if at any point in time something should arise, we can change it. In short, I make a motion to adopt this policy.
I'll second that motion. Mainly because I'm fine with people working remotely. The only concern I have is the adequacy of the internet that people have. And you guys heard me complain about this before. But if the internet isn't adequate, then you can develop some friction within the office because so-and-so gets to work from home and I don't. That kind of thing could hurt that. I'll second the motion.
Your motion was, Mike, to recommend the policy to the full county board?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Laura has her hand up.
Laura?
Now, when I first got on the board, our child support office was out of compliance with their confidentiality. If we have all of these people have to come back in the office, then we're back to stage one with offices possibly having to move and shuffling. At least this has freed us a little bit. And I honestly don't know if we have enough office space for people. So while it's not popular with everyone, it helps us as a county board be able to give our departments the flexibility to make sure, like in child support, that they are in compliance. Otherwise, then we're back to shifting around offices and finding places for people. So it's a different expense. I would strongly recommend this policy to be passed. Thank you.
Well, this policy, by adopting this policy, this will allow it to go to a 21-member board for adoption, as opposed to just the 5 of us making that decision. So this will come to the full county board. Am I correct?
Yeah, we would take this to the full county board, and this would be the 15th of June, 9 o'clock. And then you have an executive meeting that afternoon at 1 o'clock, by the way.
This is Bill speaking. I'm on the social services committee, and they went over the benefits of working remotely, and I had no problem with that. I think it does a lot of, they get a lot accomplished. I don't have that as an objection. I feel that certain offices should be allowed to work from home, especially social services, remotely. So that's not my gripe. My gripe is that department heads should be not entirely working from home. People at the courthouse, I don't believe they should be working remotely from home. And what happens, department heads, I think that they need to be here. And that's where I have a little problem. I think social services is unique, but the rest of the county, I think that there should be no remote workers from those offices. And I heard the director of social services say that they're going to rent out space. The building on 2nd Street, the 2nd and 3rd floor at that building is empty. Wouldn't it be wise to rent that out?
If I could jump in here, Bill, it's Terry Barningham. The 2nd floor is not empty anymore. And we looked at if we needed to shift things around to make the most advantageous use of our overhead, because CCS is in the downtown building, the 514 building, it is much more to our benefit to rent out the Sanborn building as far as revenue goes, because CCS is technically a fully funded program. And so our overhead in that building is paid for mostly by CCS. If we rent out space in the Sanborn building, which we also have open spaces there, we have 6 totally empty offices because of the economic support unit working remotely, we can draw down that overhead by these other programs coming in. Does that make sense? And maybe Pete can make it more clear too, but we looked at both of them, and it's more advantageous to the county and to HHSD as a whole to rent out the Sanborn building.
Gary, I would ask, Mike made the motion. Mike, would you be appreciative of a friendly amendment to change your motion or add to your motion that it affects human services only?
I can do that.
You would have to have the approval of a second.
So what you're saying is human services would be allowed to work remotely, but the rest of the employees not?
Well, the whole thing is here, this document, even though we make a decision today to adopt this, it still has to come to the county board before anything is done. So this is just to bring it to the county board. Because we're going to hear all this again before the county board makes their decision. So my point is, let's get this to the county board. The whole county board is going to make this decision. This is a means of getting it to the county board so that it's either going to pass or it's going to fail.
So Mike, if I could just kind Marty asked me what Gary would like to correct. He would say that social services would be allowed to work from remotely yet, and the rest of the employees of the county appear at their job site. Right?
Are you talking about supervisors?
No, as far as the social service workers. Okay. Social services workers would be given the opportunity to work remotely from home. Is that the way?
I can live with that.
And the rest of the employees, rest of the county employees have to appear at their work site.
Here's my concern. I want to get this to the county board. They're going to make a decision.
But I think they will follow our lead. And if we suggest that,
I can do that. I'll make the friendly amendment to include social service being exempt from this policy.
I don't
Any
agree with.
clarification? Is there any other departments that have people working remote? I mean, I know Terry input her stuff and I've heard it from HHS because I'm on the committee, but there's no other departments have anybody working remote?
Well, during the COVID pandemic issue, we had any number of people that gained access. I know Highway, Amber worked remotely occasionally. We have GIS coordinator is working remotely. Other people have worked remotely on occasion. But when I reached out to the county staff, or at least the department heads, and I said, who would be making this application? Because we basically had a fairly broad remote work policy. We adopted emergency for the pandemic. This is obviously, as you can see here, a very thorough request. I've only had one employee in the courthouse who would request the availability to work remotely, and that's the GIS coordinator, which is all computer work. Doesn't matter where she works really, but that's only a person in the courthouse who has done that. And I have not heard back from any other department that wants to go through this process to become a certified part-time or full-time remote worker. So, I mean, you are right. I mean, it's kind of the gesture of just making an HHS, I guess. It's a living document. For me, we may have an instant where you want to have somebody be able to work remotely. I mean, if you end up, if your administrator can't come here by August 31st, I said I was going to stay here I was going to work for you till September 31st. I don't have a place to live. I'll be working remotely a few days from Stillwater, come up to the hotel up here and just stay for meetings, but I'll be working remotely in September. If the guy or girl can't start early. No. But that, that's a flexibility that would be provided by a policy. It's a unique policy, and I have a unique situation.
Do we want to add something to that motion that if something came up that they would have to make a request to the executive committee upon approval?
But there's so many safeguards in here, the supervisor, their manager,
You have a supervisor, department head, county administrator, and IT all signing off on it. I'm not sure it makes sense to have a policy setting board. Your role in this whole operation, Bill, is to set policy. Your role isn't to be in operations as a board member. The operations rests with your staff.
That's kind of the point I was going to mention. I think we're getting dangerously close to micromanaging here, and we have supervisors who should be thinking those things.
If you don't agree with what your staff is doing, the department heads, or particularly if you don't agree with the way the county manager is carrying out your policies, you discipline the county administrator, because I report to the county board, and if you don't like what I'm doing, then you get rid of me or the next person. But your role isn't to micromanage. Your role is to set a policy and fly at the 30,000 foot level, not to get involved in the weeds of managing personnel.
With that, I'd like to call a question.
Would you repeat the motion, please? Would you have the motion ready?
The motion is move to recommend policy to the full county board.
No.
It did the friendly amendment?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the motion would read, move to recommend policy to the full county board applicable to only the Health and Human Services Department.
Working remotely from home.
Yes.
Okay. I have a question about the Clark. Is that going to interfere with anything you've been doing with people, with remote people working on here or we're working on here? Is that going to affect anybody that was working here?
Well, probably the only person in the courthouse would be Brittany. She works basically on computers, GIS. She works with, 911, Sheriff's Department, mapping, dealing with addressing, dealing with, it's funded by a grant. It's a fully funded grant position. The state basically wants every county to have this. And most of these people work remotely because they don't interact with people. So it'd be just that one person that basically would, if the county board, she'll continue to work remotely until the county board makes a decision. So if on June 15th, the county board says only Health and Human Services, well, then she would be affected. And then, I'm not aware of anybody else who basically is applying for the new policy.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why there's a rider on there before we forward this to the county board. I don't see the benefits of that.
Well, in all honesty, then you can vote no. Because the motion is made and seconded with a friendly amendment, so we should vote on that. And everybody can vote how they want.
And the motion was to add the rider on there?
To allow Human Services to continue to work remotely, period. The other departments not.
are you?
It'll get
I
beat
don't
to death.
understand you. Are you saying that that's the only department that can work remotely? I just don't know why we're doing that. I don't want to go against that.
I'm still not clear. The motion that we'll be voting on says that only human services can be worked remotely and no one else can.
Unless they go through the procedure.
Right,
See, this policy will still allow you to work remotely.
Follow the policy, yeah.
right.
Yeah. They could, but the bottom line is getting this to the full county board to make the decision. Now, we're gonna be rehashing this again.
So that it isn't just human services, right?
What's that?
It isn't just human services can work remotely. It would be anyone who meets this policy.
Whoever meets the policy guidelines. So they can go into guidelines here and I could request my supervisor, I want to work remotely because A, B, C, D. My supervisor is gonna, yeah, okay, that looks good. So he's gonna take it to the management. Then they're gonna take it to Clark, the administrator. Then they're gonna take it to IT to make sure you got good internet coming into your home. So you got at least 4, if not 5, safety checks there to
All right.
do the job.
Question, is this going to be, are you talking full-time remote working? Or are you talking part-time? Let's say if I have a child at home and they're sick, well, I want to be working remote from home that day.
That's got to be determined through the policy.
Yeah, but is that?
The policy says you can't do that. The policy says you can't, it's not, you can't do childcare at home and work. And when you make the application, you have to say which days you're going to work. You're going to say, if you're going to be a part-time remote worker, you have to say, I'm going to be working remotely, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday or something. It's in the policy, and it's up to this. This is your role to play in this whole thing, is to set the policy and recommend a policy to the county board.
All right, now we have a motion and a second on the table, recommending the policy be forwarded to the county board with the rider on it. Social Services is the only department that can do that. If you are not in favor of that, then vote against it. All those in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
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 Now that includes the rider.
Yes,
Who voted yes?
me and Marty. So it's 2 and 2.
I didn't hear what you said.
All right, let's do a roll call vote on that, Lori.
If you vote yes on this, you're approving it with a restriction that only social services can work.
Because the policy doesn't say that.
Okay, roll call vote. Dick Pufall,
No.
Mike Berlin,
Yes,
Gary Mertig,
Yes.
Bill Metzinger,
Yes?
Marty Vitek.
Well, I'll vote yes to see how it goes.
well, now that it's passed,
Motion carries 4-1.
Clark can take this and put this on the agenda for June 15th for the full board to discuss and either accept or reject.
Right.
That's all this is doing.
Right.
That's all I see. Thank you. Do I see something there, Clark?
I'm good to go. I'm on top of it.
Okay.
Okay, moving right along. Number 6 on the agenda, Northwest Regional Planning Commission taxable property resolution.
There's a resolution that came from the Northwest Regional Planning Commission. They basically are requesting a change to state law authorizing property owned by them to, and well, not just by them, but any regional planning commission to be exempt from real property taxes. And that would be seek a motion, move to recommend Resolution RO5 2021-1387 to the county board for approval.
Do we have any property in Aspen County that this affects?
Not that I'm aware of. We'd have to check with Jen to see if that's the case, but I'm not aware of any that they own. I think traditionally they end up with speculation property, brownfields, maybe doing economic development, and then they try to turn it over back to a business. So I honestly don't know an awful lot about it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mike?
can I ask a question? First of all, can the county board do that? And secondly, if the executive committee passes, does this go to the county board for approval as well?
Yeah, so this is a resolution that would just go to the state of Wisconsin, to the legislators. We don't have the ability to make this. This is state law. They basically are, the regional planning commissions all over the state are saying they want to, pursuant to state law 66-0309 sub 15, and they want to basically say the land that the regional planning commissions own would be, tax exempt basically. So you have to be a state law that have to be changed, and the governor would have to sign it. So you're not making anything permanent. You're just basically letting your feelings be known as a committee, and ultimately your feelings be known as a county board, whether you would support a change in state law.
Bill?
I'll move for adoption.
This is Supervisor Murdock. I'll second.
Motion made by Bill Metzinger to adopt it, seconded by Gary Murray. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Say no.
That'll be in front of the county board.
Motion carries. Thank you. This will be moved forward to the full county board. Okay. Number 7, county sales tax resolution.
This is brought to the attention from Chairman Pufall, again asking the state legislators to allow counties to impose a half-cent sales tax in addition to the current half-cent sales tax. And this would go to the full county board on the 15th also. You might recall from my previous discussions, the governor actually had this in his budget that would allow counties to impose an additional half-cent sales tax to fund mandated county services, such as these out-of-home placements and institutes for mental disorders. That was taken out by the legislators as the House and the Senate down in Madison, because whatever reason they didn't want to have that allowed. So this basically is just encouraging the legislators to put it back in.
Richard?
Yes, I'll move for adoption.
Motion made by Bill Metzinger to adopt. Do we have a second? Mike Berlin seconded the motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table to adopt the sales tax resolution. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed say no. Thank you. And that will be forwarded to the full county board also. Number 8, county gas tax resolution.
This is basically the same thing, basically requesting that the Department of Transportation allow counties to impose gas tax on gasoline sold within their counties in order to fund roads. When you think about your $8 million you're going to need over the next few years, where's that money going to come from? Well, maybe you charge more on gas tax. So same thing, resolution, just encouraging the state to allow us to do this. This would go to the full county board. With that, seek a motion to adopt resolution 05-2021-1385.
Make that motion to approve the gas tax resolution. Do we have a second? Mike Berlin?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mike Berlin. Gary?
Just a quick comment. If this gets approved, and I highly doubt it statewide, we have to be careful about county to county, because I live in an area where if a gas station in my district had this on and the county next to us didn't, we would have a fleeing of who was filling up where. I don't think we have to worry about that. I think the state at some point maybe will raise gas tax, but I agree with the philosophy as long as, you know, everybody around you had it. Otherwise,
It's not a bad problem to have, is it?
well, I would love to have the income, but I'm just worried about people driving somewhere else to get gas out of county to not pay it. It'd be nice if we had, but that's another problem. I fully support this.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Gas tax resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. Motion carries, and this will be forwarded to the county board. Thank you. Number 9, timeline for negotiation with law enforcement.
This is the last time we had union negotiations, they were done in the summer of 19. They were done by Lori and Mick. We would need this committee, which acts as a personnel committee and has the charge of basically fulfilling, you know, staff raises and stuff, which I'm assuming the union will want. And we would like this committee to direct the sheriff, county administrator, and the county board chairperson to negotiate with the union for the 2022 contract.
I'll second.
Motion on the table to approve.
I'll second it. Supervisor Murdock.
Bill Metzinger, seconded by Gary Murray, to approve the union negotiation team. All in favor, say aye. Yes.
Question, is the law enforcement the only one that is still a union?
That's correct. After Act 10, it became less advantageous for county staff statewide to belong to unions when the only thing they can negotiate are wages. They can't, you know, work rules, benefits, all that stuff went off the table. And I even think they basically said you can't withhold money. You have to pay your dues yourself. So yeah, so they're the only ones we have to deal with. It's like, I don't know, 16 people.
That's a union shop then.
The sheriff, just the sheriff's department, not the correctional officers. And not obviously, you know, people are the detectives and chief deputy and, you know, so yeah, so it's a rather small group. Last contract that was negotiated by Lori and Mick, it was a front-loaded contract. Most of the raises were granted. The majority of the raises were granted during the calendar year of 2020 and for a 2-year contract. So it was a front-loaded contract. I would recommend that we probably, when we get in negotiations, maybe try to go with maybe to get a 3-year contract, 22, 23, 24, because in my mind, if you're going to be utilizing some of this federal money to backfill your non-mandated community contributions, your challenging budget year or more challenging budget year is going to be 2025.
All right, we're ready to vote. We have a motion and a second to approve the union negotiation team. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. County board handbook.
No, we have county administrator search timeline, item number 10.
That's what I said, number 10.
You said handbook.
It is. 10 is on our
That's what it
agenda.
says in here.
Oh,
It's 9:10.
sorry, it's 9. Timeline, yeah, well, Heather must have missed that.
Yeah, there's the next item, that the search timeline's not on there.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's no action here. This is just information, so you don't have to vote on it anyway. So what's happening here is, you signed the contract with PEAA. We're coming forth with a timeline here. Here is where we're at right now. We're doing the draft position this week, and script will be sent to county officials for review. Gary Murdock will be doing a video introduction for the county. This will be a video advertisement, basically selling ourselves. with tourism information. We're getting photos, we're getting videos, we're getting a lot of information, fiscal information and other things. Position announcement will happen on the 14th. Text announcements placed online with sites on the 17th. Video announcements on the 18th, completed with the county. Video position announcement made in a social media platform. Application due to PAA on the 10th of June. So candidates will have to do that. Confidential applicant mini resume candidate sent to the county executive committee on the 11th. The 15th, you're going to be meeting the executive committee to review the mini resumes and select 6 to 10 semifinalists. Usually it'll take an hour, hour and a half. And so they're going to basically rate all of the candidates that apply, and they'll rate them with a green, a yellow, and a red based on what they feel their qualifications are fit for the county. So you're going to be meeting on the 15th at 1 o'clock because there's a county board meeting in the morning. And then on the 16th through the 25th, semifinalists will prepare a video, and PAA conducts semifinalist reference interviews and checks on each candidate. On the 29th, you're coming back here and you're going to be reviewing the videos of 3, maybe 4 candidates. And you're going to see what they're like on video, plus the reference checks. Usually it takes a couple hours. And then finalists will be the finalist, the person you pick will be notified, and then on the 3 or 4, and then on the 7th, 8th, and 9th of July, finalists, these 3 people are going to come to Ashland County. We're going to give them a tour on the afternoon and Thursday, and then we'll have like some sort of social event between 4 and 6 p.m. on Thursday. So kind of an informal thing. What I'm thinking, if this committee is in favor of this, is maybe having the full county board come into the courthouse between 4 and 6 p.m. on Thursday, the 8th of July, and basically split them up into, let's say we have 3 candidates, split them up into 3 groups, courtroom 1, courtroom 2, courtroom 3, and basically every half hour the candidates would just go from room to room to room, just kind of a, hey, how are you? Not an interview, but basically tell us a little bit about yourself and, what are your, what's your background? So the full county board gets to have some input. They, of course, would send out, after that, the county board members would fill out a report card, basically of what they thought of each candidate. The next day on the 9th, we're going to have, if you have 3 candidates, we'll have 3 activities. One will be an interview with maybe 5, 6 department heads. One will be a formal interview with this committee, the executive committee. And the third activity will be a writing assignment. We're going to ask these people to say, here, you get 20 minutes, sit down on a computer, write a letter to the county board about a policy, or write a policy or something like that. Basically, we want to analyze what is their ability to write coherently and legibly to a county board. And then, so we'll rotate all that between 9 and noon on Friday the 9th, and then we'll break for lunch. We'll come back, and then the executive committee will pick the finalist, the person that you want to hire. You'll pick the candidate that you'll want to hire. We'll negotiate with that person between the 10th and the 19th. County board will meet on July 20th to formally approve the employment agreement with the new county administrator, and hopefully your new county administrator can start on or about August 30th. Like I said before, my house lease goes out on September 1st. So if that timeline doesn't work, I'll be working remotely, basically a little bit from my house in Stillwater and staying at the hotel. So between September, if that does. And I'd be more than happy to work with the county administrator based on their preference and what the committee wants. So that's kind of the timeline and of what's going on. Any questions on that?
I got a question.
Yeah.
Now, July 9th, from 9 to 12, we're going to meet with candidates.
Yep.
And at that time, are we going to discuss salary? Because if we only offer him X amount of dollars and he turns us down, or are we going to say, based on your thing, would you, what would you?
So you're going to have, we have advertised a salary range of 90 to 120.
Correct.
You're going to pick the candidate, and then you're going to negotiate the salary after that. And basically, PAA will help you with that process. They'll help with the negotiation on that. So, you're not going to enter into salary negotiations with people you're interviewing. They know the salary range, and PA will help us decide, kind of where a person would fit within that salary range. And each individual will have their own preference too.
Will they have questions available for us to ask them?
Yep, the questions will be all set up for you, and that will be an in-person interview. And again, you're going to do one person at a time for probably an hour. And then the other two candidates, if we end up with 3 candidates, they'll do the written test, or they'll do the interview with the department heads, which I line up. And of course, that department head information will come back to you in the afternoon. If on the social event, we do the full county board on Thursday, their report cards of the candidates will come back to you. So you basically, and you're going to get a report card, or you get a little tally sheet, and it'll have 20 questions, each of which has 5 points. So each person will have 100 points possible, and you'll rate each candidate on that. So you'll get a sheet from yourself, you'll get a sheet from the department heads, you'll get a sheet from other county board members, and you'll get an assessment from the PAA, and that's how we'll make the determination on Friday afternoon.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Did you forget to put this on the agenda? Because we're talking about something that's not on there.
Yes, I could have swore I did this. I did a write-up. It's my oversight that I didn't do that. There isn't any real decision, so it's I'm just considering administrative updates because I'm not asking you making decisions. So it's more or less, I just happen to have it up on the screen. So I'm just doing an administrative update at this time.
All right, that's good.
So anyway, there's more to come on that, and I just wanted to let you know that on the 15th of the 15th of June, reserve that date for your first meeting. In the meantime, you'll see all this other stuff happen.
All right, are you ready to go to number 10?
Yes, I apologize for that oversight, Chairperson.
No problem. County board handbook. Mark?
Okay, so this came, no real changes in the handbook itself. These are the changes in red that you wanted in there from the last meeting. The chairperson shall see that advertising is done in the official county newspaper, and a new sentence at the end here, the newly appointed person shall be appointed to the respective committees that the last person was on, except for elected committees. And then Bill brought up a question, which is, when did the executive committee become an appointed committee? And that's where it got a little screwy. And so we did some research, and we basically reviewed the meeting from April 21st, 2020. So we had a meeting. It was one of our first remote meetings. It took us a half hour just to start the meeting because everybody was brand new and we had phones. And anyway, the bottom line is we made a mistake in recording what the county board decided. But just for your own reference, in 1965, you had a resolution for your personnel committee that would consist of 5 members that were elected from the county board. So that didn't even delineate chair or anybody. It could be any 5 members. And then in 2008, you had another resolution that you basically brought up, and this is a 2008 resolution here, and I handed that out to you. Here's the problem where you look at this resolution, and it's got everybody's signature on it. Okay? Because you guys used to put resolutions on the table, and then everybody would sign them. Well, this got uploaded to the document, but if you read the minutes, it never passed.
Yeah, that document was nothing legal except to talk about it during the board meeting. That document that sat on those tables meant it had enough signatures, a majority of the board present to talk about it. But what was talked about was completely different than that resolution.
Yeah, and we're not doing that anyway anymore, because on advice of our attorney, we can't do that anyway. But this is why I'm just explaining why we were somewhat confused last April, because we looked up this and we said, okay, well, that never got approved. And so we thought, well, then highway is the only one. And so we basically put a new resolution together that basically talks about the and that is so the resolution that basically we had last year passed on April 21st, 2020. And the sound is not good. We made a mistake on what was decided regarding the resolution to make executive an elected committee, along with highway state law. You can't really do anything about that anyway. So the reason this came up was even though you've been elected in the executive committee for years and years and years, we couldn't find any authorizing resolution which had passed the county board which stated as such. That's why we brought it up last April. And without a resolution spelling out the executive committees and elected committee would be appointed by the chairperson. So we apologize for this oversight. No action is needed at this time because both Court Counsel and I affirm the executive committee has an authorizing resolution which makes it an elected committee. And naturally, the county board could change anytime they wish because it's basically just a county made-up committee. So
that should be changed in the handbook.
yes, so that will be another change in the handbook, and then we'll change the website on the website when we have the listing of committees. We'll list that as a elected committee. So what I'll try to lay the groundwork for here. So next April, when you have your organizing committee, your organizing meeting, all that will be laid out. Here's what the county board, here's who's elected, here's who the county board appoints, here's the county administrator appoints. And so it all should be laid out clearly because it was kind of a mess. So
Okay, so it was wrong in the last handbook then, because there was a resolution to make the executive committee an elected committee.
So your current handbook has it down as appointed because of our basically our misunderstanding of that meeting. So we basically will correct the handbook. We're going to bring the handbook back to the full county board on the 15th to add in those two things I talked about before. The advertising by the chairperson for a midterm appointment shall be in the official county newspaper, and that the person will assume the committee duties of the person before them, except an elected committee, because that's what you decided the previous meeting. And then we will highlight the fact that staff error on the executive committee. It should not be appointed by the chair. It should be elected, and that should nail it down. So it was very confusing. So, but we figured it out.
Did we ever decide on the county paper?
So that's coming back to the county board on the 15th because the county board decided we made a staff recommendation that the Ashland Daily paper would be the paper of record. And there was different debates about, do we want to add expense to have 3 county newspapers and add to the budgets? And so Heather is basically going to put together a packet that talks about what will be the added expense to the county budget to make 3 official county newspapers. And so that will come back to the county board to make a determination if they want to have 1 county paper or do they want to spend more money and have 3 county papers.
Didn't we talk about rotating it?
Well, that could be a county board decision. So you could basically say, because right now you have a rotate, it's always the Ashland paper, and then in addition, one of the other smaller papers, and that smaller paper rotates back and forth on a yearly or bi-yearly basis. And so I'm recommending basically to save county tax dollars is to say just have one county newspaper and make it the Ashland Daily paper. That comes out twice a week.
Clark, one thing that you're totally discounting as far as the executive appointed, elected, whatever. On April 29th meeting, a motion was made to return executive committee positions to being elected rather than appointed. That was voted down 3-2 by the executive committee. Now you totally discounted that.
Well, I was doing research to find out what it actually should have been. Bill had raised a good question, which is how did it end up being appointed? It was an error that we made it appointed. And so it should have been elected.
But the executive committee voted on it, Clark. You understand that?
I did not read the minutes on that.
I'm not going to be chair much longer anyway, but I'm just saying, we were under the impression and told by our council that we had been doing it wrong all these years. It's supposed to be appointed, so we appointed them and then we caught hell over that. Yes.
I have a question too. If we have the ability to have the executive committee elected or appointed, then why don't we put it on the next county board agenda to discuss this and get a motion that we clearly understand that we want it one way or the other? And it would solve this issue, because it seems like every other month we're talking about this. And I have no problem with appointing or electing, but I just think put it on the next agenda and let's resolve this once and for all. Let the 21.
I got my reservations on it, whether it'll ever be resolved. We're 11 months away from the election.
Right.
Why does it have to be decided today? We have bigger fish to fry with administrator and all that voting going on. We do have a political. We do.
Yeah, but what we were doing is we were correcting something that was wrong. That was not our policy. And that's what I think this handbook is supposed to do. The handbook is supposed to clearly state what our policies are.
And that's why I say, why don't you just bring it up before the full county board and settle it again?
Chair Pufall, this is Supervisor Ortman. I'd like a minute when you see fit, please.
Jerry?
Thank you. I'm in agreement with Dick. This should be satisfied one way or another, but another committee that was affected by this was Ag and Extension. That was previously elected, and I'm not, I mean, I have no druthers if it's appointed or not, but I would just like to know the rationale for the change, because I always assume that we're trying to change things to make it better somehow. And changing from elected to appointed, how is that better? And let's have that stated. Or as Gary said, let's bring this to the board and hash it out once and for all, because, you know, gratuitous change is no good. And I got to assume that at some point in the past, previous bodies made it elected, made those two committees elected. And I'd like to hear from Clark what happened with Ag and Extension, because that same thing happened with that committee as happened with executive. Was there a missed, well, what happened with that one, Clark, please?
Yeah, so it used to be, right, you used to have 4 elected committees, and it was Ag and Extension, Executive, Highway, and Land Conservation? Huh? Finance.
Well, Forestry is elected.
I can't remember. Maybe, yeah, I can't remember. Anyway, so at some point, somebody made a change. I can't find when that was. We were not able to ascertain a resolution or whatever. I mean, these committees that you have that are not statutorily required by the state, you can do whatever you want. You can just pick a number and people get on there and stuff like that. So the state doesn't, on these committees, we are, Corp Counsel and myself, we are very confident that the resolution that passed on April 21st, 2020, clearly states that the Highway and Executive Committee shall be elected. So it would be, unless you wanted to make a change to that, I don't think you need to reaffirm that, because that is the resolution that exists.
That was passed by the county board.
That was passed by the county board on April 21st. Let me see if I can even dig that up here.
I would still like to retain the floor, please, after you're done, Clark, if that's all right with you, Chair Pufal.
Yeah, I gotta find this resolution here. Yeah, so here's the resolution. This is on the website. So on the website, board resources, resolutions, we're uploading all the resolutions. And so a resolution designated Highway and Executive Committee as the only elected committee for the Ashland County Board of Supervisors. And this was on April 21st. And we basically, I see the internet's a little slow here. We basically took out this one reference, whereas in 2008, County Board of Supervisors passed Resolution 02-008-931 stating that all committees other than Highway Committee are allowed to be appointed by the County Board Chair. We took that out because we found out that 2008 resolution never passed. And so this, I don't know why the rest of this resolution didn't pop up here, but anyway. So, but back to your main point there.
Okay, fair enough. I have a few other comments.
Oh, go ahead.
There's some discrepancies in the handbook because of some other updates. It's just like the ripple effect wasn't followed. If you were to look at the handbook on page 9, item 15, I'll give you all a chance to get there if you want to. Well, I get myself there. So page 9, item 15, on board members remotely, if you're remote, it says you cannot attend a closed session. Is that real? Was that a mistake, or are we all going to have to go in to the courthouse to attend a closed session? Or am I reading that right?
Yeah, so what happened was in March, or I think it was March, when we declared a state of emergency. The state of emergency granted the chairperson the ability to make emergency rules. And, some of these emergency rules were obviously, remote work and other things. And we basically made the state of emergency, the chairperson said, remote attendance to a closed session is allowed. So that is still in effect because we tied the state of emergency to the federal state of emergency, not the Wisconsin state of emergency. So that is an excellent point. If you want to change that to say that board members would be able to attend closed session portions of meetings remotely. I think part of the concern for that, which is, well, one of my concerns is from that is, let's say we're having a very delicate personnel issue, and we're talking about somebody's either protected information or a lawsuit, and you're at your house, Charlie. How do I know you don't have 3 or 4 people listening in with you?
Oh, right. I understand the potential problems with that. But if half of the board is at home for some reason, then would you even have a quorum? I guess I have more problems than answers for you, and I'm sorry about that. How we deal with that issue. I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the executive committee. So I don't know what to do in that regard.
I think we should end discussion on the handbook. We've gone through that for 6 months.
Well, there's a few spots, Chair Pufal, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but there's another one where like 17 says that the chair can send a motion to the standing committee that it's appropriate to. And I would like that to to exclude any agenda items put on under item 12, which is states the chair, the administrator can put any item on the agenda or any two board members that sign a statement. I think those should be allowed to stay on the agenda regardless and not be forwarded to a standing committee. But I'll leave that in your ball court. There's a couple other places where it says that it doesn't take into account that we have a second vice chair now. For instance, if the chair is missing, the vice chair takes over, but the handbook says if the vice chair is not there, then the administrator takes over. And I was under the impression that the second vice chair would do those duties, but maybe not. And I'm certainly not fighting for that to happen. It just seemed like an oversight that wasn't addressed in that. So page 11, item 2, and page 12, item 16 would have places where I feel like the vice chair, the second vice chair would take over the duties. But that's all I noted. And I was just bringing this up so you guys would know that there were some inconsistencies in there. Obviously due to updates we made in other places and didn't follow them through in the other places that they would follow. So thank you.
Yeah, if we go beyond 1 o'clock, Charlie, you're by lunch.
I don't believe the office of second vice chair is a permanent. We didn't write that into the handbook because I just, other counties were doing that. And yes, if everybody jumped off a cliff, I probably would too. Thank you, Marlon Schroeder, my mom. But I don't anticipate that happening again in the next organizing meeting. So I would probably not want to change the handbook to reflect the office of second vice chair unless the county board feels it's important. So with that, basically, you know, I would recommend that you basically recommend this handbook back to the county board with those two changes of the county newspaper and the appointments of committees. And then reflect the fact that we're correcting the error of the executive committee. So the motion, I seek a motion, basically recommend the county board handbook to the county board as discussed.
Richard, I will make that motion.
So clarify your motion again.
We're basically going to recommend this county board handbook as was discussed today to the full county board for approval. And the changes, as I just said, were the three changes. They're highlighted in red here. Official county newspaper, newly appointed person shall be appointed to respective committees that the last person was on except for elected committees. And basically correct the oversight of the executive committee being listed as appointed versus elected. So those are the three changes that will happen. And we'll write that we'll put that in the write-up and highlight the changes in red on the handbook as we have done in the past.
So I don't want to put this argument to one forever, but you're totally discounting the fact that the executive committee voted this down at the April 29th meeting.
I honestly don't remember that. I didn't look it up. I apologize for that.
I made a motion to change it. I made a motion to change it to be elected, but it should have never been in there to start with, is what he's saying. That's not the way the policy was.
Yeah, I mean, if you want the full county board to pass and reaffirm another resolution to make it an elected position, you certainly could, but we already have a resolution that states that it is an elected position, elected committee. And that's the official word from our corp council, that this is an elected committee.
Are you sure?
You know,
The last word.
Well,
I'm really sure, but I'm not, you know, it's like nothing's forever sure.
Dick, as chair, you can put anything you want on that next agenda. I'm serious. I think we ought to put it back on the agenda and let the full county board vote, and however it falls, it falls. Then we clear this whole mess up.
I'm perfectly fine with that. I mean, it's no skin off my nose.
Right, you know, you as chair, put it on to whether or not we should have this as an elected or appointed committee. And let the board,
Then if that happens, can we at least agree on the fact that we're gonna put the damn county handbook to bed? Once and for all, this has been going on for over a year. You know that, dealing with it all the time.
You're on revision number 20, by the way, since I got here.
Gee, the problem. Not that it's not.
I was gonna say, if we put as much energy into the budget as we did into this handbook, we wouldn't be, it would be solved.
You know, some people collect stamps. You guys collect handbooks. Get a different hobby.
I get a paper.
All right, Dick, you want the resolution, basically just to affirm that, just to clear it up for the county board?
That's fair.
Chair Poofall, may I ask one more question, please?
Does it pertain to the handbook?
It does, but it's just a short question. I'm very confused.
Go ahead.
We're talking about changes that were made, and I know I've heard some other board supervisors wonder when it was made and thought that it hadn't been made, but I was totally unaware that this handbook had the position of second vice chair removed. When did that happen? And why wasn't I told?
It was never put in the handbook, Charlie. It was just a pandemic. Organizing meeting in April of 2020. One of the thoughts was that if the chair, the vice chair, we weren't sure how severe the pandemic was. If all of a sudden the fatality rate was 70%, we would need a second vice chair. So it never got into the handbook. And my intention is probably not to put it into the handbook because I don't think you're going to need it.
Well, I didn't think so either, and I still don't. But thank you for that explanation. That makes much sense.
I imagine you already did your commentary part before.
Well, as far as administrative.
You did your, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I have a couple of things. There's basically this, and I'll send this out. We just got this at 4 o'clock yesterday. This is the Treasury Department guidance for the $3 million. And so we'll be going through that to ascertain, what's in there. We're going to have to schedule a meeting for the joint finance and executive committee because the county board has directed a joint finance executive committee to wade through their proposals for this $3 million. And so we're going to have to schedule another meeting for that. And we have started a spreadsheet, basically. You can see online here, I haven't posted this anywhere, but everywhere from payments to essential workers to imaging. Matt wants a secondary EOC down in the highway department for $300,000. University of Wisconsin for 3 years, $600,000. Temporary additional extension education to help peoples and families recover, $90,000 a year. Airport part, county fair, AEDC, Office on Aging. So these are all things. We got 42 on the list so far, and we'll schedule a meeting, I don't know, sometime in June probably. That'll give staff time to go through the guidance and come up with a rating system to ascertain what we're going to do with this. But as those of you who had attended the finance meeting, my intention is to try to at least pull off as much money as we can from our community contributions to help save general levy dollars for basically the healthcare. That's where I'm going with this. And if we do other things with it, that's gravy. But we'll set up a meeting for that. I just wanted you to be aware that that's coming up. I have nothing else, Chair.
All right.
Motion adjourned. Motion to adjourn.
The full county board in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carries. Anybody want to adjourn?
All right, shut down the recording.
Motion adjourned.
Wait. Can
Take
you,
care, everybody.
Lori, can you shut the recording down?